Hey everyone! Earlier this year, GEEKOM released the GeekBooks X16 Pro and X14 Pro, two super thin and light ultrabooks, and they directly followed up with another model, this one that we're taking a look at today. So what can this slightly trimmed down but noticeably cheaper GeekBook M16 actually do? And then we're also going to see how it holds up against the competition in form of an HP Omnibook 7. And spoilers up front, the battery life on the GeekBook is just crazy for that price. And as always, full disclosure here, GEEKOM provided the GeekBook M16 to me for this review, but they didn't get to see the video beforehand and they didn't tell me what to say. This right here is 100% my honest opinion, and just like always, it's not gonna stop me from explicitly pointing out negative aspects as well. Alright, quick overview of the specs for the GeekBook M16 first. As of right now, there's only this one version available, where GEEKOM once again utilized the Intel Core Ultra 9 185H, a 2.5-year-old but still pretty fast Meteor Lake processor, with 6 performance, 8 efficiency and 2 low power cores, so 16 cores in total and 22 threads, since the 6P cores also support hyperthreading. It is still a fast CPU and has some pretty decent multi-core performance. The processor is allowed to pull up to around 40 watt in this laptop. The Core Ultra 9 also features an Arc iGPU with 8 Xe cores and 128 EUs. And that actually allows for some casual gaming and even video editing and photo manipulation, paired with 16 GB of DDR5 RAM at 6400 megatransfers per second, which is understandable during the current RAM crisis. But I mean, considering that, the price tag of just around $800 is totally fine. Plus you get a 512 GB PCI Gen 4 SSD with read and write speeds of around 3.4 to 4.8 GB per second. That alone costs around $120 right now, paired with an easy $250 for the RAM. We already made up almost half of the price for the laptop here. The 16-inch IPS display in here this time around has a resolution of 1920 by 1200 at 60 Hz. On the GeekBook X16 Pro that was 120 Hz at 1600p. Then the GeekBook M16 also features Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.4. The device now has a noticeably larger 99.9 watt-hour battery. HW Info actually told me it's 102 watt-hours. It has a very compact, sleek 100 watt USB-C GAN fast charger, and Windows 11 Pro is pre-installed again, though the GeekBook is also Linux compatible. The Omnibook 7 over here it's facing today, on the other hand, features a slightly newer Raptor Lake Core Ultra 7 240H processor with 6 performance cores plus hyperthreading and 4 additional efficiency cores. It's also equipped with 16 GB of RAM, but at a slower 5600 megatransfer per second. The iGPU in here is also a few steps slower than the one in the GeekBook. The build quality of the GeekBook M16 is all in all very good and quite premium again. The chassis is made entirely from a silver magnesium alloy and the coating is extremely good at repelling fingerprints. It can absolutely keep up with the noticeably more expensive HP Omnibook 7 over here, which has a slightly firmer screen lid, look at this, than the GeekBook. But otherwise, they feel and look pretty similar, in my opinion. Both devices can easily be opened with one hand, and I actually like the design of both equally well, but of course, I mean, that's purely a matter of taste. But for $800 for the GeekBook, it definitely looks and feels very premium. In contrast to its predecessor, the GeekBook M16 now weighs around 400 gram more. That is noticeable, coming in at 1700 gram, while the HP Omnibook 7 here is actually even a bit heavier at 1900 gram. Both are almost the same size, with the HP Omnibook being around 2 to 3 millimeters longer, wider and thicker in all directions. I'd say the GeekBook just barely passes as a thin and light, the HP almost doesn't anymore. More like standard, definitely mobile but nothing outstanding in that regard. GEEKOM also saved some costs on the screen and now only puts in a 1920 by 1200p IPS display with a 16:10 aspect ratio and a 60 Hz refresh rate. Color accuracy isn't bad overall, with 98% sRGB, and I measured a sufficient brightness of up to around 327 nits. However, the difference after calibration was clearly visible. The HP Omnibook 7 offers almost the same brightness at 333 nits, the same resolution, the same 60 Hz frequency, but much weaker color values with only 66% sRGB coverage. Plus, the difference between calibrated and uncalibrated was even bigger here. So GEEKOM clearly used a better display, especially since the Omnibook shows clearly visible backlight bleeding at the top. Both devices feature a white backlit chiclet keyboard with a full-sized numpad. Both are good to type on, though I liked the HP Omnibooks a little bit better because the key travel feels a bit firmer here, but that's just personal preference. GEEKOM also built in a fingerprint sensor into the power button here. The HP doesn't have that, but this one features Windows Hello login via webcam, which the GeekBook doesn't offer. By the way, both do have a physical kill switch. The large touchpads are similar in size. This one is a bit more to the left, but just like with its predecessor here, I'm struggling a bit more with the clicks on the GeekBook M16 because once again, only very small areas in the bottom left and bottom right can actually register clicks at all. I drew that out here and I tried to highlight it for you in this footage. Definitely takes a lot of getting used to. The Omnibook doesn't have that problem, but the click feeling on the GeekBook, on the other hand, is much better compared to the rather spongy touchpad of the Omnibook. Connection-wise, both are almost identical. There are two USB-C and two USB 8 ports each, as well as one HDMI and one audio jack. Both also support display out via USB-C and external graphic cards. On the GeekBook, one of the two USB-C ports is USB 4, and on the HP Omnibook, it's Thunderbolt 4. On the HP, however, almost all ports are unusually located on the right side, which I find very problematic due to a mouse potentially colliding with cables here. But the GeekBook comes with this neat little docking station here. Since this one also supports power delivery, you can plug in the power supply directly in here and then get an additional 2 USB-A, another HDMI port and even a 1 gigabit LAN port. That is obviously pretty good. By the way, the GeekBook M16 is actually pretty easy to open. Just undo the 9 Torx screws down here and then you can hook your fingers in here at the back, at the bottom, and carefully pull and then unclip it all around. Inside here you have access to the main M.2 SSD as well as the second SSD slot, which is only suited for smaller 2020-30 SSDs though. Plus you can see the huge battery here, which would be swappable as well or replaceable. But RAM in here is soldered on. As said before, when it comes to battery life, the GeekBook is clearly ahead of the HP Omnibook with its smaller 70 Wh battery thanks to its huge 99.9 Wh battery. On idle with 20% display brightness and activated Wi-Fi, the GEEKOM GeekBook M16 reaches a crazy good 41 hours here. To my knowledge, this might be the highest idle runtime I've personally ever seen on a Windows laptop, especially with x86 CPUs. You could visit a friend overseas, come back, and it would still be running probably. And the HP Omnibook surprisingly only hits a disappointing 13 hours. HP really didn't configure the minimum TDP of the processor well here, as the system drew almost 5 watts on average on idle. Watching YouTube videos at 50% brightness and headphones at 20% loudness, the GeekBook reaches an outstandingly good 17.5 hours and the Omnibook again only 7 hours in comparison. Gaming without an FPS cap in The Witcher 3, the GeekBook does reach a solid 2.5 hours, but unfortunately, as the battery level drops, the performance of the iGPU also drops heavily to a point where it becomes unplayable. This performance drop is also noticeable in Cinebench R23 runs on both laptops, so they cannot maintain a full performance on battery in the long run. In everyday use that probably doesn't matter, but if you want to max out the CPU on battery power, well, you're out of luck. By the way, again, both devices come with a neat little 100 watt USB-C charger. The speakers on both laptops are usable, but only mediocre, with a slightly tinny or hollow sound on the GeekBook, which gets a tiny bit louder though. They were noticeably better in the predecessor, the GeekBook X16. I don't think these in here are the same. Under load, the GeekBook reaches a fan noise of about 40 decibel, quite silent in comparison. That was different with the X16. During a 4K YouTube video, the fan was minimally active, but almost inaudible even in a quieter room. The HP is slightly louder under load at 42 decibels, but for YouTube and on idle, it was basically completely silent, since the fans can completely shut off then. And by the way, they also shut off for the GeekBook when it's on idle and for both devices when they're on battery. Which also, of course, depends on which of the modes you're using, like the silent mode, balanced mode or performance mode, but they can run pretty silent. Both laptops don't get uncomfortably warm on the top or the bottom of the chassis. I definitely measured thermal throttling on the GeekBook though during Cinebench benchmark runs. However, my rooms are currently also 6 to 7 degrees Celsius warmer than usually, unfortunately. By the way, the performance modes can be set in the control centers of the devices. On the GeekBook here, that's the very simplistic GEEKOM PC Manager, though I'm not sure again if that isn't just a shortcut to the standard Windows settings. However, by pressing Fn+P, we can also switch through the performance modes. In Cinebench R23, the GeekBook M16 with the older Core Ultra 9 scores up to 15,080 points in the multi-core test compared to the almost identical 15,176 on the HP Omnibook 7, almost a tie. In the single-core test, the Core Ultra 7 240H of the HP with 1,967 points is 13% faster than the 1,743 from the GeekBook, which was expected, since it's the newer processor. And real quick, the Geekbench scores for both devices, 2,412 and 12,419 for the GeekBook, and 2,793 and 12,871 for the Omnibook. Point goes slightly to the HP device here. In the Everyday PC Mark 10 test, the GeekBook M16 manages to overtake the HP Omnibook 7, 8,433 versus 7,618 points in performance mode, which is 11% more for the GeekBook. Just a quick note on this, both laptops are more than fast enough for everyday use, and they run without any lags, waiting times, hiccups, etc. But to be honest, that's been the standard, and it should be in this price range for these kind of laptops for quite a while now. In 3D Mark Filestrike, the GeekBook is 65% faster thanks to the much better integrated GPU in the CPU, scoring 7,644 points against only 4,642 on the Omnibook. In time spy, it was 124% faster with 3,591 for the GeekBook and only 1,606 for the Omnibook, so more than twice the points. In a direct comparison in the Cyberpunk 2077 benchmark at 1200p on low settings and with XeSS on balanced, the GeekBook is very clearly ahead of the Omnibook's 26 FPS with a 62% higher 42 FPS in performance mode. Although we have to make it clear that during actual gameplay, the 16GB of both of them could also become a bottleneck, since they simultaneously have to be used as VRAM for the iGPU and system RAM. The SSD of the GeekBook was slightly snappier in a direct performance comparison than the one in the HP Omnibook, but both play in the same league and are absolutely fast enough. The GEEKOM GeekBook M16 is obviously not a gaming laptop, but thanks to the still somewhat usable integrated ARC graphics with 8 Xe cores and 128 EUs, you can definitely dare to play around or two of casual gaming here, provided the 16GB RAM capacity is enough. It's about in the ballpark of modern gaming handhelds like the first Asus ROG Ally or the first MSI Claw, stuff like that, Lenovo Legion Go 1, etc. But it's important to mention here that I found out that the performance mode in the GEEKOM Center currently causes the iGPU's performance to drop drastically. So right now you have to use Fn+P as an alternative to switch performance modes instead, but GEEKOM told me they're going to fix that. For anyone interested, I also have a long gaming test video for the quite similar GeekBook X16, though you have to keep in mind this one had 32GB of RAM. For the overall now not so demanding Diablo 4, I used 1200p with low settings and XeSS on balanced. The FPS were roughly between 45 and 60 FPS depending on the scene. I did notice some minor stutters but didn't find them annoying. That would actually be the kind of game that I would personally use the GeekBook for example. In GTA 5 Enhanced, I set all settings exactly to high, plus FSR also to balanced, which in my opinion is still very acceptable on the 16-inch laptop display. That was also enough for roughly 45 to almost 60 FPS, though here the stutters were much rarer and the whole thing actually ran really nicely and smooth. So it looks good, it runs decent, you can definitely play it like that. For CS2, I wanted to squeeze out the maximum FPS, and so of course it was the low preset combined with active FSR. That resulted in around 100 to 120 FPS in most scenes. Definitely still somewhat doable for casual matches and the like. Although, of course, the 60 Hz monitor in here isn't really quite up to date anymore at this point for FPS gaming. So, all in all, GEEKOM's model expansion is definitely a success. There's room for improvement here and there again, but well, established manufacturers have had little issues for 10 to 20 years too, and you can clearly highlight the price to performance ratio here. Especially nowadays, and especially if you grab the GeekBook M16 during a sale or with a code, and I will try to get one for you, just check the comments and the description. And this should bring down the price to just around 800 euros or dollars. The HP Omnibook, on the other hand, costs around 1,150 euros directly from HP at the time of this review. The GeekBook really has a fantastic battery life, a usable screen, a good keyboard, a very strong everyday performance, acceptable speakers, very good build quality. Only the touchpad is a truly notable point of criticism, at least for me. Otherwise, the price to performance is really pretty good. Absolutely suited as a daily driver for working and for light gaming, light video editing, or like for university because of the superb battery runtimes. Compared to the definitely popular Omnibook 7, I'd say the GeekBook M16 can really keep up without any issues, offer the better price to performance ratio since it's significantly cheaper. For 800 euros or dollars right now, there's really not much to complain about. And that's it for today. If you liked the video, feel free to leave a like or ideally just subscribe to the channel right away. Thanks as well for watching all the way to the very end again. See you next time. Bye bye and cheers.